Hey, hello everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. Hold on a second. Yeah, that piece of hair. Okay, I'm having serious problems here. Anybody, if you're in the chat room, can you tell me if you can see and hear me? I really need to know that. What? Wait a minute. What's going on here now? Oh, this is bizarre. Okay. Um, Something's wrong with the whole computer. Okay, yes and yes. Okay, this is not my normal camera, not my normal microphone. So if you can see and hear me, we'll go with it. Yes, I did the Nicola Bulley press interview video 2 hours ago, and when I came back after I moved my computer, and, oh gee, now I've got phones going off. When I hooked my computer back up, the camera wouldn't work and the mic wouldn't work that I used just 2 hours ago. So now I'm in just backup crap. All right. So anyway, guys, yes. Hold on one second. Oh, now it's my daughter saying, I think she wants me to pick up my granddaughter. Hold on 1 minute. Right now is what I'm putting into it, the text. Go away. Love you. All right. So if you'd like to be in the chat room and enjoying the madness here at the moment, please do click on Patreon below. And I want to welcome those who are here for the Hangout. We've got Benny here, lying in wait or laying in wait. I don't know either which one, Benny. And Christine is here. Christine is talking about the press conference. Lancashire I'm going to talk about the vulnerabilities and the Nicola Bulley missing case. I just did the video on it, and I actually thought it was a very good press conference. The only thing that bugged me was that they talked about some vulnerabilities and then they wouldn't say what they were. And I thought that was a really bad idea to bring that up because then it opens a hornet's nest, right? Well, apparently it did, because right after I did the video, I started getting these comments in YouTube saying, hey, this is what the vulnerabilities were, that she had some issues with menopause and issues with alcohol. And I'm like, where did you get that? Well, apparently that's what came out after I put the video up. I guess they decided they had to do something, got permission from family. And so that information is out there. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So now Benny does say this. By the way, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, let me just you might have not heard my stuff on Nicola Bulley. I did an analysis and I did this press conference. She went missing, I believe it's almost 3 weeks now, in a place called in Lancashire and in the UK. She was a mom. She left the house in her car, dropped her 2 children off at school, and from there she left her car and took her dog, which she did all the time, and went walking along the River Wire. I think I got that right. I'm looking for my notes now. And while she was out there, people saw her. There were a couple people who knew her, saw her, stopped and chatted. And she made a couple texts, and then she went online to do this. There was this work thing going on. So she wasn't participating in it specifically herself, but she was listening to it. So she logged on to that, and then she went missing. And people found her phone on the bench, still logged on, even though the meeting had stopped. They found her dog there and no Nicola. So it's been 3 weeks. So the police's number one theory is that she fell into the river for some reason. And they've never found her body, though. And some people say, hey, that wouldn't have happened. The river was pretty shallow. It wasn't rolling along all that much. So we think that's not true. And so over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of hate toward the police, a lot of nastiness, saying, oh, they're not doing their job. They're just saying she went in the river when they never looked at an abduction, that kind of thing. And so what happened is I did an analysis and I said, here are the different theories and here are the most likely ones. Abduction is the least likely of the theories because she was in a really weird place where you couldn't pull up in a van or something. Literally, somebody would have to walk her across the grass over these fields, like by gunpoint, to get her out of there. And it's an unlikely way to abduct somebody when you have other choices. And it wasn't nobody raped and murdered her there because even though daytime's not a good time, and that location wasn't a good time, and there were other people out there. So it really was a crappy time for a serial killer to rape and murder her. Her body was also not found there. So if somebody had done that to her, she would have been in the bushes someplace, but she was not found. So clearly, no, she wasn't attacked by a serial killer. But being spirited away across the grass is just unlikely. So the two top theories, in my opinion, is their theory that something went wrong. She fell into the river and they just haven't recovered her. The only other one makes sense to me because the partner said that if he had to say something to Nicola, what would he say? And he said, please come home, which I thought was odd because if you didn't think she was in the river, you would think he would think she was abducted, unless he knows something we don't. Like something's wrong with her emotionally, and so she might have run away. So that was my second place. So now what's happened is after the press conference, the police came out, and after they said the vulnerabilities thing, came out and said, oh, well, okay. So we were called to her house once for an alcohol-related issue. She has problems with alcohol, and she has problems with some menopause issue. I don't know what those are. But it's interesting because what happens when you look at a case like this is that you hear, in the beginning, we heard not one negative thing, like life was peachy keen for her. Everything was rosy. You know what I mean? She was happy in her relationship. She was happy with the children. She was happy being a mom. She was happy, happy, happy. And therefore, you say, well, then there's no reason for her to run away or commit suicide or to be doing something stupid. Because I did mention, hey, we don't know. She could have had alcohol in her purse and, in her little bag and be swigging. And that could have caused her to lose her balance and fall in. But nobody went there because everything was so wonderful. And now they're going, maybe not quite as good as people have said. So now there's issues. But do those issues mean these contributed? And we have to be careful of this too. Did these issues contribute to what happened to her? The police said it made her high risk. Well, I guess if she was depressed, I guess if she was drinking, although I don't know if she was drinking that morning unless the partner said she was, unless the people on the past said, she was acting she looked kind of drunk to us. Unless they said that, I don't know what would make her high risk. I mean, people go through menopause all the time. It doesn't make them high risk. And people do drink, but doesn't necessarily make them high risk. So I keep thinking they had to know more about that morning about her to just think that something was off in some way that could contribute to what happened to her. Now, if she were abducted, none of this would probably matter. It wouldn't. Even if she was depressed and drunk, still somebody would have to decide to abduct her off that path and take her through the fields, which is still unlikely. So this is interesting information. I do think it supports more the police theory that she may have gone into the water, but they have been receiving nothing but a massive amount of hate. And on my previous video, oh my goodness, I have been blocking people, removing stuff. You wouldn't believe the nastiness. This is one of the nastiest groups of people I've ever seen over a case. Just insane. Absolutely insane. Before I go on to something else, let me see what your thoughts are. Let me say hello also to Kelly and Strega and Sarah and Scarlett and Alisa and Sky and Jupo and Aunt Dini and who else is here? Molly's here. Lisa, did I say Lisa S already? Did I Martin already maybe? And now I'm going to forget where I'm at. Lisa N is here as well. Let's see if anybody else is here. Oh, okay. Well, okay. I'm going to just go up to your comments now. All right. Because I'm interested in what you have to think since I did the press conference this morning. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen my comments on the press conference. That was one of my actual short videos, which was only 20 minutes. That almost never happens. Let's see. This comment, well, why would she be at high risk? Yeah, I would think the only reason she would be at high risk is if that would influence her actual behavior. I mean, if somebody, let's say, has an alcohol problem and they go driving and their car is in a ditch, they would be high risk of getting behind a wheel, because they have a tendency to drink. Now, that doesn't mean that they were drinking that moment, and it doesn't mean they drank enough to cause that problem. So that's where you have to be a little careful. So things can be hot, make you at a higher risk, but it doesn't mean that that caused you to have that problem at that moment. For example, let's assume you're a prostitute. Prostitution is a high risk profession, right? So a prostitute goes home and she's found raped and murdered. What will people say? Oh, she was in a high risk profession. Yes, but you know how she got raped and murdered? She stopped on the way home at a giant grocery store. She was buying regular groceries. She went out to her car and she was kidnapped by a serial killer who had no idea she was a prostitute. So that can happen where, yeah, she was high risk for that, but that had nothing to do with her disappearing at that moment in time. Now, if she disappears while she's working, the high risk thing would have something to do with that. But you have to be a little careful when we say low risk, high risk, to understand that that can be in general or it can be at that exact moment. And I don't know for her, because she's like not thrilled about menopause, who is? Well, actually, I was. Because I was one of those people that never had any issues. It just one day I woke up and it was all over and I was like, yes. And everybody hates me because of that. But I know a lot of women go through a lot of struggles with menopause. And so, but they don't usually kill themselves or other people. It's just they're struggling and they're having, it's not necessarily fun. And alcohol, again, just because somebody drinks, how much? And sometimes people, just because somebody drinks a little doesn't mean they drink to the point where they can't function. But the police were called to her house at one point. That's unusual. What would have happened if she was called? If they were called to her house, was it the neighbors who called, the partner who called? That could be pretty extreme for that to happen over alcohol. So I don't know the whole story there yet, but that would be concerning. Yeah, those issues would give a lot of women a reason to disappear. Yeah, it by itself, that would be odd, unless the problem she was having with menopause were bothering her so much she used alcohol as medication, and then the menopause problems went on and on and on, and she got more and more, she drank more and more. That's all I could say. But I don't know that has any effect on what happened that morning. But maybe the police know something, or maybe they're jumping to conclusions. I don't know. So let's see. Oh, I can block comments. Yeah, on YouTube, I do. There's many comments I remove because they're stupid or they're obnoxious or rude, and sometimes they're insulting not me but other people who are there. And sometimes I block the whole person off if I decide that they're just not serious about having to enjoying my channel for what it's offering, and they're just being obnoxious toward me or to other people. Maybe they're a psychopath. I just block them. Now, mind you, when you get 1,500 comments, 2,000 comments or more, yeah, I lose control. And then there's a whole bunch of nasty people. But I do what I can, sometimes in the beginning at least. Let's see. Sky Ricky says, if she were drinking in the morning, I don't think her husband would allow her to drive their children unless she hid it from him that day. Well, again, it depends. Yeah, how much if she did drink that morning, how much did she drink? And secondly, how far away is she? What kind of, I don't know the roadway from her small town to the next small town. Maybe the roads are pretty basic, and even if she had a few, he wouldn't have worried. I don't know. And so we don't know. And that's why you have to be part of the investigation. And that's why people outside the investigation shouldn't go so nutty. Oh no, the police, blah, blah, blah. You do not know. The police could have interviewed the partner and friends and people at the school and the people on the trail, and they may have a lot more information than you or I. And they're not required, public, to go out and tell every piece of information to the public. That's not the public's business, quite frankly. The public are concerned about the case being handled properly, but they don't need to find this out by the police giving them the entire case so that they know everything, because a lot of this stuff is private. And people give interviews. They're not necessarily to be spread out in public. You know, these are what you tell the. Let's say somebody came to me and said, "Hey, we want to know if this friend you have, whether this could be something that could have happened. Can you tell me anything about your friend?" Well, I may love my friend, but my friend might have a problem. And so I'm going to tell them what the problem is, not think that's going to end up on YouTube the next day that I just ratted my friend out and my friend hates me. You know, I'm going to tell the police because I want to help the investigation for whatever it is. I think so too, Sarah. It was a good press conference, and I'm usually not thrilled with press conferences. That one was excellent, and the rudeness toward the detective, she was great, and I thought she was professional through the whole thing, and the comments were unbelievably nasty. Just incredible. Just incredible. From her clothing to how she was angry and defensive, and none of those things were true. It was really, really sad. Hi, Mary. Well, this Molly midlife crisis, including her known and unknown issues. And that's why when I talked about the possibility when the partner said, "Please come home," I had to stop, even though there's no evidence that she left the fields. If for some reason, some way she knew how to leave the area without being seen, I could not 100% take her going off on her own off the table. Because I don't have evidence to say she left on her own, but I don't have evidence to absolutely prove she didn't. And if she was having problems, people run away sometimes. They do. So, yeah. Let's see. Oh, that's a good point, Lisa. I don't understand why this case is so controversial and high profile compared to others. Did anyone have any ideas? Well, I'm going to give you my idea. First of all, she's a mom with 2 children, and that's always something. It's a small town as opposed to being some, big city. And it's intriguing to people because the phone and the dog were at the bench, and then she's missing and vanishes. Literally, that's what the original show, the documentary was called, Vanished. And if she had been found in the river a day later, 2 days later, I think nobody would have thought a thing of it. But it's been almost 3 weeks and her body's not in, they haven't found it. And so people can't believe she's in the river. And if she's not in the river, where is she? And then this is what started all the speculation on the internet. So that's where that all went. Cheryl says, "It's ridiculous people talk about the policewoman's clothes. What kind of world do we live in?" I'm going to tell you about that because I find this is true all the time. I know there's male counterparts of myself on the internet. They can dress, say, do anything. And people are just gushing over them, no matter what. Gush, 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 gush. Over the way they look, the way they dress, what they say, everything. But when it comes to women, they get brutal, especially older women, professional women. They get brutal. And we see this here. This woman she did her job extremely well in that interview, and yet they were attacking her, talking about her hair, talking about the fact she had a sleeveless dress on, just nasty stuff. She's just lucky she wasn't 20 years older. She would have gotten worse. Oh, Lord. So, let's see. So what? The menopause makes all men pause. That's what Public Enemy said. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess, to some people that doesn't go well, but for me, best thing ever happened in my life. Woo, it's been great. But so I'm okay with that. Now let me go on to something else since we've talked about that quite a bit. I want to talk about, hold on a second. Oh, I might as well, Kohberger. Okay, I haven't said much about him. And I'm not going to show a picture of him because I consider him at this point a mass murderer, so you don't need to see his face. So anyway, he is the one who is the suspect in the Idaho mass murder of the 4 students. So this is what I want to talk about, which I think is just really interesting. Hold on a second, let me find it. Hold on one second. Where did I pull? Oh, here we go. First of all, one of the things they talked about was how he got fired as a teacher and how he was basically creepy toward women, which fits in very well with him being an incel. I've said since the beginning, this looks like an incel mass murder to me. And he is coming across more and more as an incel, a person who has problems with women. Women don't like him, and therefore he feels like involuntarily celibate. Nobody will sleep with me, that kind of thing. But the thing that I find, that's not my reason for doing this, is about linking him to other cases. And that's what I'm actually looking for. There was, hold on. Go. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so this is, article is, they're looking in Pennsylvania for cases that are linked to him. Now, many people think he's a serial killer of some sort. I don't see that as likely. Mind you, I always point out as a profiler, there's no such thing as never. And so it's not like I'm saying, oh my God, I'm always right. I'm absolutely 100% right, you know. And then, no, what I said was, I see this as an incel mass murder. I don't necessarily believe there were murders prior to this. That there might have been bad behavior prior to this, yes, but I think this was his moment in the sun. That's what mass murderers do. They don't usually have serial homicides before this. But should they look? No, absolutely. The first thing they should do, since they have his DNA 100%, is put it in CODIS. You put it in the national bank and you see whether that DNA from Kohberger matches any other murder. Because why wouldn't you do that? You don't have to think I'm right or wrong. You know, you can even think, well, Pat Brown's probably right, but we're going to look this up anyway. Or you could say, we think Pat Brown's wrong, which is also fine. Look it up anyway. Of course you should look it up, for gosh sakes, no matter what anybody says. You put his DNA in CODIS. So far as I can see, nothing has shown up. He has not been linked, as far as I know, in the CODIS system to another homicide. Now, they're now looking back in Pennsylvania. Authorities in Pennsylvania have searched unsolved cases for links to Idaho murder suspect. Authorities in at least 2 Pennsylvania counties where Brian Kohberger went to college have made no connection to cold cases. Now, what they're also doing is looking for, in unsolved cases, they've been looking to see whether in those unsolved cases, I guess they're including rape too, if anybody involved had his height, his weight, his method of operation, MO, or any of the characteristics that you would say, that guy did that. Now, mind you, if they're trying to link him by those distinctions, there's no DNA to link him with. So they're going to other stuff now to see if there's something around it. You go, hey, you know, no DNA there, but I think that guy could have done it. They've come up with nothing so far. But they did have this really interesting thing, which I like, which I came across, which I've been pushing this kind of thing for years. They have only found so far, he's got no criminal record, and he's only got, I think, a parking ticket. Let me find this one. They went to a database. It's called the RIC, the Regional Intelligence and Investigation Center, to see if there was any police contact with Kohberger. I think this is brilliant. This is what I've been pushing forever. I'm like, what I want to see, especially for serial homicide, is that when somebody's brought in, especially on a case where they're a suspect in a serial homicide, suspect in a rape, that their contact with the police goes into a data bank. So even if their DNA doesn't match anything, let's say you've got a woman who's just been raped and murdered in, I don't know, let's say Connecticut. And they have a national database of people who've had contact with the police. And then you, especially in rape or any homicide or anything else, they've been a suspect or even just a contact. So let's say you put that person's name and you say, well, this woman in Connecticut got murdered and we're putting in the names of people that worked in her office, the security guards, you know, because I like to say security guard, #1 job of serial killer. But there's some security guards at that complex that the woman walked out of before and disappeared. They take the names of the security guards, they check them into the system, and they come up with, oh, look, the police contacted him in a case in, what's next to Connecticut? Rhode Island? New York? A case in New York. And look, he was a suspect in a rape over there. Now you see how that would be useful to know. And then you might even find out that he's gotten 2 or 3 contacts. And that's getting a little suspicious that in 3 different states, this guy's name appeared. He wasn't arrested, but his name came up in those investigations. And they let him go because they didn't have anything. Maybe they didn't think it was him. But now you see the connections. So I love that. So they put Kohberger's name in here to see whether he pops up and some woman complained that he raped her, or some woman complained that he harassed her, or that he stalked her. That would be useful to know in Pennsylvania. But they didn't come up with anything. What they came up with was only one contact to Kohberger, a 911 call in which his car was locked behind a park gate on a bike trail. Although I like the bike trail thing, I would want to make sure there were no dead girls on the bike trail. Even though I think he's not a serial killer, I would still check the bike trail, attempted rapes and anything else on that bike trail. Apparently got stuck behind a locked gate. And there was a response from him thanking the police and apologizing for the inconvenience. So this could be innocently have parked there and got locked up. I don't know why. I'd like to know why his car was there. So this is a great way of finding out what other things he could be connected to. A database like this is fantastic. But to say so far, Kohberger has not been connected to anything, including all of the cases that are all over the internet that people say he did. So far, they have not come up with anything. And believe me, police will try, because if they can close down their cases, you don't think they're going to try to hook Kohberger in if they could? Yeah, they sure would. Let's see. He did have problems in Pennsylvania at a bar. He was flagged in their system. Well, was that the bar or the actual? Yeah, he was creepy. Yeah, that's accurate. He's a creeper. Yes, he did. He was obnoxious in the bar. But and it's meaningful. But then again, if you've ever been to a bar, you can there's probably like a whole bunch of obnoxious guys. Yeah. So we'll see whether they ever do come up with anything on him. Let's see. I'm just looking backwards. Okay, so that was my thoughts on Kohberger. So then I want to go to another really interesting article, and this is on this was an article that came out on. Hold on a second, let me find it. This is on make things work. This is on the Lindsay Clancy case. All right, in Massachusetts. She's the one that murdered her 3 children. And she's in the hospital now. So she's the one, she supposedly, she claimed to have postpartum depression. She went to doctors for that, spent a little time in a hospital for, I think it was 5 days, and they found she was okay. They sent her home. And then just right after that, she sent her husband on an interesting trip to pick up some takeout food from a restaurant, and also to be sure he stopped by a drugstore to pick up something for the kids, and checked out how much time it would take him. And after he went out the door, she strangled all 3 of her children and then jumped out a window. So now there's a big argument over whether she should be charged with homicide. Now, she murdered the 3 children. There's not a question that she murdered 3 children. She strangled them on these exercise bands, brutally strangled them, took their lives. But there's a lot of people who think that she shouldn't be charged with murder because she had postpartum depression, and she might have been on some meds that could have messed her head up. Well, wow. They don't want it to go to court. They just don't want it to be charged. They just want to they feel sorry for it. They say, well, postpartum depression can make you do that. And medicines can make you crazy. All right. I'm not saying that these things can't be true, but she premeditatedly killed these children with sending her husband out to get rid of him for a specific period of time so she could commit this crime. And afterwards, she asked to speak to a lawyer. So I think she knows. And then she called up her husband, and then she told him, I heard a voice, and that's why I did it. She is pretty clear about her, she knew it's legal and not legal, which is the important thing about when you kill or not. And there is still a question. I don't care what people say. She might have had postpartum depression, but we don't know that she was psychotic. We don't know that the medicines she was on made her psychotic. We have a bunch of friends that I think the defense attorney has been reaching out to everybody, and these friends are saying she's the most wonderful person. She loved her children dearly. She would never hurt them. But then again, they're all wrong because she did. And I've been looking into her past to see whether there's any signs of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, whether she used to go to the doctor way too much, because one of the top professions for Munchausen syndrome by proxy is nursing, and for female serial killers is nursing. So she's a nurse, she's a midwife. So she's working in a place with babies. You would think she'd have more understanding of postpartum depression. You would think. You would think she would know more about what to take for depression and what not to take, when to be around children, when not to be around children, how these things can play out. She had more knowledge than most women would, so she could make better choices. But my question is, what is her real history with the children? Some people are now saying she was always so concerned about the children, she even used stethoscopes to listen to their heart. I'm like, why? I'm not, why? I know you know how to use a stethoscope, but really, that's kind of weird, in my opinion. And there was some comment she made about having to take care of the other two children, didn't allow her to take care of the baby as well, pay attention to him as much. So is she into babies only and not into older kids? I don't know. I don't know her history. I'd love to know whether she excessively went to doctors complaining her children had problems, because that's a Munchausen syndrome by proxy thing. Did she claim things about her children that weren't true? Was she overly obsessed? I mean, I want to know, because I don't know. And I think this is what the police investigation has to figure out as they go toward a trial. But there are people who say there should be no trial. We should accept 100% without question that if she was depressed, postpartum depression, she could have gone into psychosis, and we're not supposed to even question that she did go into psychosis. And if she was taking medications, that didn't throw her into psychosis. But again, we don't know how many medications were. They say 3 now in her system. I don't know what exactly the 3 were, how much they were, and whether she really took them, I don't know this information. And so I don't know that these things caused her to do that. And the fact that she had her head about her enough to plan this whole thing out makes me question. So here's this article. It's called, It's Not a Crime to Charge Lindsay Clancy with a Crime. This is from the writer says, she's a columnist with the Globe. Plymouth District Attorney Timothy Cruz would be abdicating his responsibilities if he didn't pursue charges against the Duxbury mother accused of killing her 3 children. So, is it a crime to charge Lindsay Clancy with the crime of killing her 3 children? Advocates for women who suffer postpartum mood disorder are helping Kevin Reddington, Clancy's defense lawyer, make that case that she shouldn't be charged. That the prosecution is distorting, what postpartum depression is about. So therefore, she shouldn't be charged. For Tim Cruz to say, okay, it's reported in the news that the defendant is suffering from postpartum depression, so therefore I'm not going to charge her with murder of 3 human beings, 3 little defenseless children. That's actually not in the article. That's me. 3 tiny defenseless children who looked up to their mother for safety were brutally murdered by her. I think they deserve justice no matter what anybody says. Now, if it isn't proven, if she was not mentally sane at the time, or she absolutely did not know what she was doing, well, that's a different matter. But that's not proven yet. And that's the whole point of this article. Those children deserve justice. And you can't just let people commit murders. Just walk away because you think, oh, I feel sorry for you. You must have had some issues. I mean, we don't let men who murder the whole family walk away. Is a female family annihilator can say she's depressed? A male family annihilator cannot say that. And they also pointed out another case that was taken to court that people haven't gone too crazy about. A woman named Latarsha Sanders was found guilty of ritual voodoo stabbing deaths of her 2 sons, and this is in the same area. She killed her 2 sons. She didn't have postpartum depression because her sons were older. So I guess once you're past a certain point, you can't get away with saying that's influencing you. Now, I look at this and, the issue about postpartum depression, how long does it last? Just 1 week after the baby's born? 3 months? If you're still nursing, what is it? At what point can you not claim postpartum depression? I mean, for a woman, is it like, if I had a baby, I can claim that forever? Or does it end at some point and just become regular depression? Anyway, this woman, what happened was she was charged with murder of her 8-year-old son and her 5-year-old son. They found the boys inside the 3rd floor apartment. Hold on, I got to sneeze. Wait a minute, well, 2, 3. Okay, I'm holding it back. I usually sneeze 10 times in a row. Excuse me. All right. Cruz said at the time, this is the same prosecutor. She had made statements. The woman made statements to the investigator admitting the killings. 1 month after the killings, she had confessed to stabbing both children multiple times with a kitchen knife. Then she cleaned up the children, placed them in beds, and Clancy put the children all in the basement and mopped up the crime scene. She never sought medical attention for the boys. Neither did Clancy. She jumped out a window. All right. Sanders initially blamed the killings on other people before admitting responsibility. She told prosecutors conflicting explanations, claiming she was motivated by voodoo stuff or that her daughter wanted a little blood. After Sanders was arrested, her mother, Earlene, told police that her daughter became mentally unstable and crazy and had a 2-year obsession with the Illuminati. She spied on her neighbors with a baby monitor and was consumed by rituals, numerology, and sacrifices. Earlene added that her daughter had refused mental health treatment. She got convicted. Now, if her mother is correct, for 2 years, this woman's been off the deep end, right? Believing in really weird stuff. I mean, people can believe in all the weird stuff they want, by the way. And so, I mean, many people do believe in a lot of weird stuff. It doesn't make you a killer. But now she's claiming she killed the kids because of voodoo. Now, where is her responsibility? And she was found guilty because she knew what she was doing. Now, she said, well, maybe voices told her to do it too. She was supposed to do it because of whatever. I don't know how that's any different than what we're hearing in the Clancy case. So this woman gets put away, and Clancy is not even supposed to be taken to court. So, and I'm assuming that the problem was, that this particular woman who got convicted, when she was arrested for stabbing her 2 sons to death, people are like, but Clancy, she worked as a midwife in a hospital, and she's one of those, pretty young moms who looked like, she shouldn't do such things. And so therefore, she should somehow not be as responsible as the other woman. Kind of crazy stuff by people who aren't also, I don't know, maybe all of us are crazy. But let me see what your comments are on that. But I think that she has to go, whether she's found guilty or not. That should be proven in a court of law. The prosecution should have to prove that she knew what she was doing, and the defense has to prove that she was psychotic and did not know what she was doing at the time it occurred. Not that she was depressed. Anybody can be depressed. It doesn't mean you become homicidal just because you're depressed. You can be homicidal when you're depressed, but it doesn't mean your depression doesn't necessarily make you homicidal. That's a choice you still make, unless you've lost all connection to reality. And we do have a system that says, if you understand what you're doing, you're guilty of the crime you commit, and you have to pay for that. So it should go, in my opinion, yes, it belongs in a court of law. I may find out that there was a lot of evidence to say she didn't know what she was doing. Right now, it doesn't, in my opinion, so far, it looks like this was premeditated homicide. But that's for the court to figure out. Let's say, well, this is an interesting problem, which I see a lot. Take it out on yourself and not the kids. There are there is a point of time before we do anything that we can remove ourselves from the situation, that we can realize that we are becoming unstable. That's when you check in to a place. That's when you get somebody to come and sit with you. That's when, if that's even dangerous, you just take yourself, you say, stay with my kids. I got to get out of here. That's where you seek help and find some other way to do things before your kids become endangered. That is part of our requirement. Is if we have enough sanity to do that, we should be doing that. And the way she sent the husband away, I don't know, because she claims at the last minute that a voice told her to kill the kids, but that's apparently only after she sent him away on this little excursion. So to me, it looks more like it was premeditated. And I'm not even sure about, and this is something else we have to take into consideration. When she checked herself into the mental institution for 5 days and they didn't find her they didn't find her psychotic. Did she do that in order to set up essentially an excuse for why she was going to do what she's planning to do? That's would be the next question. Just because people, well, she was in the hospital. You see, she checked into a hospital. So that's how serious she was. Was she? Or is she just doing that on purpose? So then when something happened, she could say, well, I sought help. And that's what's going to be part of the court case. Let's see. I'm going down here. Cheryl says, I absolutely agree with you, Pat, that the nurses seem to have Munchausens, but I have postnatal depression, not psychosis. The medication I had made me numb. If she is, I can't imagine how she feels. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, when you're depressed, again, I point this out all the time, certain medications will change your chemistry. The chemistry is changed when you take the medication. It doesn't necessarily, this is where I have a disagreement, but people can say, stay in your own lane, Pat, they always do. But I've studied this, and I cannot come up with absolute proof that postpartum depression, for example, they can't prove. They say there are some things that have been maybe connected to postpartum depression, but it's very, very weak. But you've got to say that if you're here, if brought you down here, if supposedly the chemicals did this and the medication is going to bring you back up to normal, that would make sense. But a lot of times we don't have this proof. So what happens is when you're depressed, anything can bring you to a different situation. Alcohol changes your chemistry in your brain. That doesn't take you back to normal. It takes you to whatever alcohol takes you to. Cocaine will change your chemistry of your brain too. I'm pretty sure when you take cocaine, amphetamines, and you're running around and you're all wired and all that, that's not normal. You might be happier, but it's not normal. And so there's all these medications that can whack up your brain. Now the question is, can that put you to a point where you go into psychosis? Not just depression, but psychosis. And that's a good question. And then also when that stuff does that to you, because it can mess you up. If you're around children, you need to get the hell out of there. I mean, and if you take stuff and it's making you so depressed, you feel like the world is just a big black hole, you need to A, stop taking the medicine immediately. B, go someplace safe. You must do that to protect yourself and others. I mean, you have time, hopefully. I mean, I'm not going to say never, you know what I mean? But we as human beings have to also make choices when we put things, when we accept medication, because medication is drugs, 100% drugs. A lot of them aren't that different than what you can buy in a corner. But just because the doctor hands it to you doesn't mean it's safe. So we just have to recognize that. And I hope more and more people recognize that. I'm not saying you can't ever get medication, and I can't say if you're severely depressed that medication won't help you. I'm just saying be very, very careful, and you have to be careful who you deal with and who is giving you the medication. And if you're getting any medication for depression, you should be being seen on a regular, consistent basis by somebody, not a doctor, by a psychiatrist, somebody helping you on a therapy along with the medication. That's just, because so many sad things happen when people get into medication. Some people it works really. Some people will claim, "Oh yeah, I got this medication. It worked really great, and it made all the difference in my life." bully for you. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying when it doesn't work, you got to be very careful. Anytime you put anything in your body, you just got to be careful because it can have results. And we are, if we have responsibilities, especially for children, we have to make sure we're safe, and those children are safe, and maybe safe from us. That's my last thought on that. So that's one of my soapboxes. Anyway, well, see, some of these things are true, but if that's true, that you need to reach therapeutic levels for months, you need to be under psychiatric care the entire time, and not just be taking stuff and not paying it, having nobody pay attention. And I see them do this all the time. It drives me crazy, because people walk into the doctor, I'm depressed, and say, okay, take this, and they'll walk away. Nobody's even watching what's going on. They're not asking what their problems are. They're not helping them solve their problems. They're just chucking medication, drugs, as I said. No, if they're going to give you something, it should not be coming from a medical doctor. It should be coming from a therapist, or whatever. It has to be a psychiatrist if that's the way it works. From a psychiatrist who then has you seeing them so that you can work with them on a constant basis to try to fix your basic problems and also regulate the medicine and make sure the medicine's not harming you. Let's just stay safe. Or that is also true. Yeah, you could stabilize while in a hospital. Yeah, well, that is a good idea. Hospitals sometimes are necessary, especially if you become a danger to yourself or to others. Yeah, but I just think in this particular case, we do not know what the truth is about Clancy. Although we do know, the facts are she murdered 3 children, and it appears to be premeditated. Therefore, yes, she should be charged. And if the defense can prove that she went psychotic because of something, not just depression, or not just she took some medicine, they have to prove psychosis, that she literally did not know what she was doing at the time she was doing it. So that's the system, the way it should work anyway. And so it'll be. I think it will go. I think there's too much here with her. If she hadn't sent her husband off on the specifically planned trip, have him away long enough to commit this crime, it might be more confusing as far as the prosecution goes, but I think they're leaning heavily on that. So that's why it's going to go to trial. There's just no way around that at all. And if you take a look at, for example, Lucy Letby, she's still on trial in the UK for murdering. She's suspected of murdering all those babies. And if you look at her, for example. Look at her. That is as wholesome a young woman as you'll ever see. Happy smile. She's not overly made up. She looks perfect nurse type. Perfect. And I want to know more about her history. I want to know if there is psychopathic behavior prior to the moment where she became a suspect of murdering so many babies. There has to be signs of narcissism. You don't just wake up one day a really healthy, happy human being and decide to murder babies to get attention. So if she's guilty, she should have a history of narcissism there somewhere. I haven't been watching the trial, so I don't know if some of you are watching the trial. It's really creepy. It's very sad because, babies that she tried to kill 2 or 3 or 4 times before she succeeded or finally didn't succeed. It's horrifying. One of the things they're saying is that, when they look at what's the common factor between all these babies' death, it's Letby. She was there. She was the one hovering over, doing things and in and out of that room when that baby died. And she was originally on the night shift when those kids were kicking off. And then when she got on the day shift, it changed over. I think they've got a lot to convict her on, but along with the fact she wrote some things that were like I'm evil, which definitely played into the prosecution hands. But I really am curious about her history. What came before. And it's the same thing I'm saying with the Clancy case. Is there something before this moment in time she killed 3 children that we see something happening in her life? The same way we see with what we see with male family annihilators, that they've lost their jobs, they found another woman, they're tired of being married and they're tired of the family life, and they decide I'm going to get rid of them so I can go out and just be a single dude again. There's this, and there's behaviors. It doesn't just pop out of nowhere. Now you may not recognize it, but when you look back, you go, ooh, wish we'd seen all those things, but one doesn't necessarily see it. So I'm curious what Clancy has in her history that would show us, because her Facebook page is full of beautiful her children, and it all looks pretty and happy. It does. But she looks pretty and happy too. And both of them are nurses. So I just wonder. I'll be very curious to see what both of their backgrounds are. I haven't been able to find Letby's background very much at all, but I'd like to know. Yeah, Mary Beth Tinning knocked off, was it 9 of her kids? Yeah, she was busy. Oh Lord. Let's see. Well, Andini said she had a husband, neighbors, friends, coworkers, a therapist, and never reached out. Well, at some point, if you're talking about Clancy, she did say a few things here and there and went to a therapist, but there's options. The same thing with Andrea Yates, which is why I think she premeditatedly killed her children. She made sure that this was the moment in time she could get away with it. So, and she had help, and I guess her mother-in-law was around, so she could ask for help. I'm feeling weird. Even if you abandon the children in your house and just walk out the damn door, go to the neighbor's house and say, I'm freaking out. Call 911. I can't be around the kids. But now the only way that you could say somebody wouldn't do that under those conditions is if they truly are psychotic to the point where they're home. They're not premeditating this, but they're just home, and suddenly they see their children as little satanic creatures, or some voice really does tell them your children are bad, you got to take them away, or your children are going to be ruined, you got to take them off the earth. If they hear that and they're really right, then nothing can stop that. That's where you talk about psychotic, because if you know somebody who's really psychotic, those thoughts will fly through their heads, but there's usually signs of it. Really, there's usually lots of signs of a person who's got problems with that kind of thing. It usually doesn't just pop up in 1 minute of their life. So I don't know. So, but yeah, I'm curious to see how this will all turn out. Now, I want to do this one. This is kind of in a lighter sense here. I think it's a Dear Abby. I think it's both funny, but it's also concerning. All right. So a married woman revealed that her husband allegedly called her flatulence. Absolutely revolting. Hold on a second. My page just flipped. Hold on. Don't do that to me. Now, what did it do that for? Hold on. Why is it doing that? Hold on 1 second. Page just jumped. Okay. She only farted in front of him one time in 9 years. One time. The anonymous wife confided that she was aware of his distaste for inappropriate public displays of bodily functions, namely burping and passing wind. She recalled that one of her friends let out a belch, and he spent the entire trip home rehashing how gross it was. After hearing his strong thoughts on the topic, she made a mental note to make sure that she didn't let any gas out around him. She really struggled to make sure that never happened accidentally, until one night when her guard was down and the post-pizza gases came back to haunt her. Lying in bed next to her husband, she accidentally let one rip, and she was met with a disgusted look. And he says it's very unladylike for women to do that. Ugh, it's disgusting, especially in front of her husband. Revolting. All right. She admitted being embarrassed, and she's humiliated by it, okay? And mortified that she finally slipped. After 9 years. 9 years. That's pretty darn good in my opinion. I'd just be getting separate bedrooms, Hey, dude, you sleep over there. I'm going to relax in my bed in another room with the door closed. And she said, however, so she apologized to him in the morning, but to no avail. While at the time he accepted my apology, ever since it has happened, he keeps reminding me of it in different ways, as if he is teaching me a lesson and making sure I'll never do it again. So, for example, if they're watching a movie and that happens, he'll remind her how disgusting it is by making a disgruntled noise or talking about how uncivilized it is afterwards. The unnamed wife kept this to herself until she couldn't take it anymore, finally turning to a friend for advice. So the friend thought the husband his behavior was outrageous, and that she shouldn't feel guilty about it. Then she says this. This is where I just find the red flags go up to me. It really is the only thing that is a big deal for him. And while others may say it isn't important, for me it is, because my husband, who I love and who is in every other way so wonderful, thinks it is. She's claiming her husband is wonderful in every other way for 9 years. Just one incident has made him humiliate her, constantly remind her, continue to humiliate her, be cruel to her over and over and over again. So how does a man who's perfect in every other way suddenly become this kind of human being? My guess is he's not. My guess is he's a control freak. My belief is that he's probably been manipulating her, and if she did anything, she always felt it was her fault. He made sure of that, I'm pretty sure. Not just like, oh, hon, it's my fault, or hey, anything can happen. I'm pretty sure that over those 9 years, he's convinced her, he's gaslit her into thinking things are her fault. So therefore, he's never wrong, and he's still nice, and he's so considerate. He's so kind to me, even though I'm such a dummy. Oh, I could make so many mistakes, but he's so kind to me. He hasn't thrown me out of the house yet. I don't believe for a minute. If that's what set him off for this much and he can't let it go, something else is going on here, and he's no perfect husband. And I bring this up for this reason. I hear so often people will say the perfect person is perfect, their mate is perfect, their significant other is perfect, their son is perfect, except for the fact he's been to prison 10 times. You know, all these people are perfect. And then you find out all these details. And this is when you're doing a police investigation, here's that main problem. You go and you talk to the parents. Oh, my daughter would never, she's wonderful, blah, blah, blah. My son would never, blah, blah, blah. And it's not true. And there's so many behaviors that they have simply ignored or lessened in their mind as being anything of use. And then they overfocus on when the person's nice. So they go, oh, he's just such a great guy until that great guy kills him or something. So, so Molly says, this is the ladies' bodily function hour with Pat and friends. It is, isn't it? Usually I will say this, usually, at least when women do it, they don't laugh as heartily as men and think it's just the greatest thing ever. Hey, you guys do that crap all the time. And we do try to tell you, can you tone that down? Sarah says, perfection doesn't exist. Start there. Indeed. No one is incapable of doing something illegal. Well, I would say, I don't know if I want to put illegal on it, immoral, unethical, illegal, all those things. Anybody under certain circumstances might do something less than perfect. And that's why we have to work on being good people, because sometimes we're not as good as we should be. But there are some people who that's not their problem. The problem is that they're nowhere near perfect, that they're actually narcissistic or psychopathic, but the people around them don't even recognize it and will claim they're perfect. And that's why people get into trouble in relationships. They pick the wrong person. They pick abusive people to be with because they don't see it, or they just ignore it. Or they have their needs trump paying attention to the fact that this person is not treating you in a healthy fashion. So it's just something to keep it in mind when you're in a relationship. But that is very true. Power, control, and insecurity. Yeah. But I thought that was just an interesting, little bizarre comment. And then I had just another one in the advice column, which I thought was interesting. And this is, people make really big deals of things that they don't need to. And they also, if another person makes a big deal, oftentimes they will then play into it or accept it when they don't have to accept it. Dear Abby, we accidentally named our new baby the same name as my father-in-law's old mistress. Okay, so dear Abby, I recently gave birth to a second child, a girl. Shortly afterward, my husband called his mother. She lives in a different state. Now, this is interesting to me too. A different state, hours away, and visits only once a year. Okay, so this woman isn't even hardly ever around. Okay, when he told her the happy news and our little girl's name, which we had kept a secret, she became very upset. It seems the name we had chosen, unbeknownst to us, was that of her husband's mistress from years ago. For days afterwards, she would call my husband crying and pleading with him to change our baby's name, telling him he should never have telling him he should never have kept it secret. I guess they didn't tell the mother-in-law the name plan before the baby was born, because probably you didn't think that when you named your child, whatever you decided to name your child, that was going to be your father-in-law's secret lover. I mean, really? Okay. So she told him she would never speak that name. A week later, we received a generous gift of baby clothes in the mail from her. At this point, she hasn't checked in with me, the one who gave birth. She refuses to acknowledge our baby's name and will refer to her only as the little one. I don't know how to thank her for her generous gift, as normally I would just call her, but it's clear she doesn't want to hear from me. Can you please advise me? Now, I totally disagree with Dear Abby on this. Dear Wrong Name, it was unfortunate that the name you and your husband, I presume, chose for your daughter was the same as the woman your father-in-law cheated with. If your mother-in-law's solution to the problem is to refer to her granddaughter as little one, accept it. Oh no. Here's the thing. Accept it. Okay, and then let me tell you how she thinks she should accept it. It seems very loving, actually, that their grandchild is going to be called little one and can never have her name used ever. That's loving. I'm sorry, don't agree. And when you write her a lovely thank you note for her generous gift, sign it with love from your name and little one, which is a sweet nickname. Oh, Lord Almighty. Lady, mother-in-law, get over yourself. You're not going to, mother-in-law, this may come as a surprise to you, but I'm going to guess there may be 1 million people who have the same name as your husband's ex-mistress. Now, that's his fault. Blame him for what happened. The mistress, the name is just a name. It's just a name. What are you going to do when you meet other people in the world with that name? What are you going to call your boss? Big one? You're going to run around your entire life not ever saying that name because it's upsetting? That is the stupidest thing I ever heard. My name is Pat, as you know. What a surprise. My name is Pat. I was married for 25 years. My husband and I divorced. He remarried. He remarried a Pat. It's like, and you know what happens? When I talk to my children, I would talk about her with her name, because that Pat wasn't this Pat. And when I said her name, it just always meant her. When I say my name, it always means me. My kids can say, oh, we went and saw Dad and Pat. Actually, she tended to call her name Patty, but then I go, okay. I say, is Pat coming here? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend her name doesn't exist, call her the other one, or the next one. I mean, it's ridiculous, and I'll tell you a little story about something I always thought was really interesting. This is how you learn about how names, for example, my maiden name. When I got married, people say, oh, you should keep your maiden. These days people want to keep their maiden names, but I never thought about it. And my maiden name was so dang long. I was happy to have Brown as especially for writing books and being on TV. Hey, we're here with Pat Brown, and not here with Pat blah, 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 blah. And I can't say it, right? Now, when I got divorced, I never gave that Brown name back. I've been using it ever since. You know why? Because I'm Pat Brown. That's it. It's just a name that I use that I'm comfortable with because that's who I have become essentially. But when I was a kid, there was this little girl who I went to school with. I think we're both 9 years old. Her name, and I'm actually using this in one of my books, Cornelia Petronella Johanna Miller III. It was her name. And hi, Cornelia, if you're out there still in the world. At that time, she kind of frizzy blonde hair, and I remember she had sort of buck teeth, and she played the tuba. She was my friend. So, but the word Cornelia, for many years, stuck in my head as a girl with frizzy blonde hair, buck teeth, playing a tuba. And then I saw this movie, and one of the actresses' names was Cornelia, and she, of course, this was an adult, not a kid, a stunning, gorgeous woman. And now I had a whole different vision when I heard the name Cornelia. I had that vision. And in my book that I'm one of my mystery books I'm writing, that I have names in there too, that now it's a third version of that name. And I would meet tomorrow another Cornelia, and I haven't yet a fourth version of that name. So, mother-in-law, you have a problem, not your daughter-in-law. And your daughter-in-law doesn't have to play your game for the rest of her life. Here's what she should have written back. She should have written back to her mother-in-law. Thank you so much for your kind gift to Mary. I just want to say, and then Mary and our little girl Mary, really appreciate your lovely gift, and so do I. P.S. I understand that the name sucks for you, and that you have some bad memories from the name, but I'm hoping now that your grandchild has this name, you can forget about what the name was before, and this name will now be music to your ears. That's what I would have written. I wouldn't play that game. And if that's the game she's playing, I'm going to say mother-in-law might play a whole bunch of other games too. So, oh no, no. I think now if the grandfather had named the kid after I don't know if the husband even knew the name of that mistress. I don't know if that was even in his head. Now if the grandfather had given that name, then we'd have some concern. That would have been sick. I used to be a technical recruiter, and I've seen a lot of crazy names like Tampon and Perfect Conception. And I think Covita is very popular now too. Some crazy stuff. Oh. Yes, we had a soapbox. Lisa already missed my usual soapbox. I don't like people. I have problems with people who murder their children. I don't know why. It always kind of bugs me, But anyway, I just thought that was an interesting one. Don't play into somebody's games. There's a profiler can encourage you not to do that. If they have a problem, it's their problem. And if they say, I have a problem, you go, you do have a problem. You do. And you'll have to figure it out, because I'm not going to change my life and take away my daughter's name because you have a problem. You need to get over it. And hopefully our daughter having that name will help you get over it. I would leave it alone. And then if mother-in-law doesn't ever want to see her again, that's probably a mother-in-law you don't want to see again. That's her choice. No, she's not being kept from the child. She's just being an idiot. And someday, even if she calls it little one, that little one's going to say, Grandma, why aren't you saying my name? What's she going to explain? So she's just being an idiot. Don't play into it. Don't play into people's manipulations. That's what that is. It's a manipulation. I wanted to point this one out about these two guys who were arrested. We were talking about the other day about on the case I did in Hawaii, the one where the man is now out of prison because the DNA never did match the three men who were in prison, who the girl was raped and murdered, and the DNA never did match. And so he's now out. But sometimes, and the question is, when people get very frightened sometimes about familial DNA and DNA that's, years later, somebody comes after you years later and says, you committed this crime, 30 years ago. And you're like, what? Thinking that, you didn't do it. So a lot of times we see these, the question is, is that person really the person who committed the crime? So anyway, this young woman was killed in, let me get you when this all went down. Hold on, my computer. Hold on. There we go. Anyway, there she is. Her name is, she was 17 years old. Her name is Laurel Jean Mitchell. Okay. She was killed in 75. She lived in North Webster, Indiana. She left work at the Epworth Forest Church Camp on the north side of North Webster Lake in some county I can't pronounce, and she did not arrive home. Her parents contacted the police, reported her missing. Now, they investigated this and could not quite figure it out. They finally found her body in the water, and it was listed as drowning, but there were signs that showed she fought for her life. Okay. However, let's see, what did they? I'm trying to figure out where that information came. So now they have arrested these guys 47 years later. Okay. Here they are. And of course, I don't think we feel terribly sorry for them because those look like some scary creatures if I've ever seen scary creatures. And one of them has been arrested for pedophilia, I guess. So anyway, so one of them they're both 67. Hey, they're my age. Yeah, hey man, I don't know that's one hard life if you look like that. Man, you're a mess. But anyway, they were both charged with murder. All right, now, how did this happen? They say this case is a culmination of a decades-long investigation. Science finally gave the answers. Remember, usually in these cold cases, almost always it's DNA because it's very hard to prove anything outside of a confession that there's some information in that that's absolutely true. But DNA is pretty much the way. So that's how they got the guys with DNA. Now, one of the questions is, okay, so let's say this girl's walking home and she disappears, body's found, she's been raped and murdered. And these guys, supposedly the guys that did it, right? Okay, then you say, well, of all the people in the United States, these guys got nailed with DNA. How do we know they killed this girl? I mean, how could it, maybe it's just a mistake. All right, here's how you start understanding it isn't a mistake. First of all, they have to be in the area that this occurred. So, if they're like, oh, this is the guy who did it, but he's like, wait a minute, I live in Germany. Never been in the United States in my life. Couldn't have done it. Or lived someplace across the country where he clearly never left that location to commit this crime. And of course, you'd have to prove that. But generally speaking, you're going to have somebody from the area. Where were these guys from? They were from the area. Now, so there's no question they were locals. But then the next question I had is, and somebody's going to jump on me for this, I'm sure, but I'm looking at the picture of the girl, and I'm like, okay. At the time, I would say she's maybe not a beauty. She looks overweight to me. And I'm not trying to be mean. Or maybe it's just a bad picture. But, she's a nice girl, but she probably didn't win homecoming queen. What does that mean? Well, I pointed this out many times. Usually when that happens, it's somebody who knows that person, that somehow they're able to get them to go with them. There's some interaction, not just grabbed off the streets. And I know people are going to jump on this, but this is just my experience. So I said to myself, when I read this case, I went, well, did somebody just grab her off the street or did she meet somebody someplace? Turns out those two guys were at a party. Who was at the party with them? She was at the party with them. So now we have DNA linking two teenage boys, I think they were 17, 18, at the party that she went to after work. So that's the problem. And then she clearly went with them, and then bad things happened to her. But that's how I'm pretty confident they got the right people, because it's not a case of just, hey, some guys match some guys. And these guys, I don't even think these guys are they, where are they now? Let's see. Both are charged with murder and both were incarcerated in the jail where they're held without bond. So they were not in prison at the time. How did they get their, I'm trying to figure out the DNA thing. I'm trying to see what their records were. I know one of them had a record. But they were at the right age at that time, and they had contact with her. And so I'm going to say it would be pretty unique that DNA wasn't, accurate or correct. So I'm just pointing that out just because so many people have said to me, well, what if they just got two guys out of nowhere or picked out some guy and he had nothing to do with anything? But the case of Darlene Krauschak has that same kind of issue with it. So Darlene Krauschak is a case I worked on years ago, and I have done that case for a video. And after all those years, they did familial DNA. They finally got familial DNA off. There's some questions where they got that from. I'm going to say that. As far as a cigarette, and they claim something else. It's a little confusing. Anyway, they got his DNA. Well, what did happen was that when they found out who it was, he had indeed lived there and lived in the area, was in the Army like she was in the Army in Colorado Springs, and he had been frequenting the same bars as she frequented. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't have smoked cigarettes outside, threw them on the ground at the crime scene, and then the girl got killed and dumped there, and that isn't accurate. And there's some other stuff that supposedly matches him from the crime scene as well. I'm still a little confused about that. But it's not like they picked him out of nowhere. I mean, that actually brought the DNA actually matched a guy who was exactly where she was. So I just point this out in this case too. It's just like that. They got this DNA, and lo and behold, it goes right back to that town and right back to the party she was at, where the two guys were. What a coinky dink, you know? You know, so I find that kind of interesting. Let's see. What's this? It can happen, Pat. That guy they charged with the Madrid bombings had never left the States. I don't know. How did they get? I'd have to look at, I would have to, they had a fingerprint match, ignored all the other evidence. I'm not sure. Okay, wait a minute. All right. He had an alibi, didn't have a passport, hadn't left the States in 10 years. The prosecution ignored all that. Now, is he convicted of that crime? The Madrid bombing? I'm gonna have to look that up now. I mean, theoretically, that should be the proof that he wasn't there. If that's true, and he couldn't have been there, I don't care what's there. Fingerprints are supposed to match, but if they're doing a fingerprint that's only partial, or DNA that's only partial, then it becomes the person who's analyzing it, the analyst's viewpoint on whether that's a match or not. So I'll be curious about that. And again, just because you have DNA doesn't mean automatically, no, but you have to, oh, okay, they released him. Okay, so that's the point I'm making then. You're making my point. I don't know how that got there, but I'm saying is if in this particular case, what was this Indiana case? The guys were there and they were at the party. That's what I'm saying. It's not like, hey, we've never been in Indiana, man. And yeah, we were in Indiana, but we were 200. We never even got near that town. We don't know this girl. I mean, it could still be them, but it's interesting that yes, they were in that town and they were at that party. So when you get that absolute, you're pretty much sure you got the right guys. That's all I'm pointing out. I just think it's fascinating when it just zeroes right in. Let's see, do I want to talk about anything else? Let's see. Okay, I think I'm just going to talk about one more, and then yeah, it's getting late. But somebody had asked me, and I may have talked about John Gardner before, John Albert Gardner, but I did want to talk about him because we're talking about people being arrested and charged with stuff. Where's John? Where'd you go, John? Hold on a second. Oh, there he is. Okay. This guy, John Albert Gardner III. All right, there he is. This was the guy that was convicted of raping and murdering. He's a convicted double murderer. No, dude, that's a serial killer. This is interesting. This is from Wikipedia. He's an American convicted double murderer, serial killer, and child molester. He confessed to the February 2009 rape and murder of 14-year-old Amber Dubois. I don't know if that's pronounced. I don't know if it's Dubois or Dubois. I would say Dubois, but I haven't heard her name. So, from Escondido, California, and the February 2010 rape of 17-year-old Chelsea King from Poway, California. Let's see. He got into a plea agreement, didn't get executed. Isn't that nice? Additionally, he attempted to rape 22-year-old Candice Moncayo or something like that in San Diego County. And then This is where it gets interesting. Previously incarcerated for the molestation of a 13-year-old. Now, here's what bugs me about this whole case. Now, they go on about his childhood, and it sounds like he's a piece of work. Anyway, in 2000, he was convicted of molesting a 13-year-old female neighbor. He spent 5 years in prison and completed his parole in 2008. And get this one. This is what drives me crazy. Although it was determined he had violated the terms of parole 7 times. How do you violate parole 7 times? I mean, aren't you only supposed to violate it once and then you go back? I mean, I don't understand that. Including living too close to a school in 2007. All right. He also got investigated for possession of marijuana, and that was dismissed. He was also tracked by GPS anklet up until 4 months before the murder of Amber Dubois. Gardner totaled 168 parole violations while wearing the anklet. I don't even should have a soapbox for this. What's the point of a parole violation? What's the point of wearing ankle bracelet if none of it makes any difference? How did that help anybody? I mean, he should have been immediately put back in prison for as many years as they could put him back in prison for. Then he spent, according to GPS data, he spent time in close proximity to several schools, to a daycare center, and on prison grounds where he was suspected of delivering contraband to a prisoner, and in remote locations where the remains of Amber Dubois would later be discovered. I do not know what this ankle bracelet's for. Now, Gardner's first murder victim was 14-year-old Amber Dubois. They had questioned him about her murder. Now, mind you, he'd already been in prison for molestation. And I'm going to say, when he molested this girl, it didn't sound like a he said, she said. It sounded like probably a sexual assault, 100%. And it somehow didn't include rape, so they just called it molestation. But he got 5 years, so I'm going to say it was pretty serious. So this guy is a child sex predator. He gets out in 5 years. He violates all these violations, and he's still wandering around. And now he's suspected. What a surprise! About this Amber, right? Now, let's see. Then Chelsea King goes missing. She was jogging. They found her body 5 days later, buried in a shallow grave. All right. Now, they're looking. This other woman this other jogger fights off this guy and hits Gardner's description, right? She survives because she fought him, and that was amazing. She whacked him in the face with her elbow. Good for her. And they had a description of him. He's finally arrested, and there's other witnesses that say that's where he went. All right. So this is what I thought was really sad about the whole thing. Well, there's so many things sad about this. This is where Chelsea's law came in that mandated that some of the worst child molester offenders would face lifetime prison sentences. Good. Oh, but even if you're not going to do that, parole violation should be a parole violation. It shouldn't be a parole. Oh, did you do something we didn't approve of? Oh, well, just don't do it again. And the girl, let's see if I can find the. Hold on. One of the things I wanted to bring up was the issue of why they didn't charge him with rape with a jogger who got away. All right. So what happened was, wait a minute. That's not what I wanted. Oh, okay. This is what I wanted. Okay. So the jogger who fought him off, it says here, a robbery that was really an attempted rape. So she goes running, and she crossed paths with John Albert Gardner. No, she didn't cross paths with him. He crossed paths with her because he was probably stalking her. Gardner, who has since confessed to raping and murdering 2 young girls, replied politely that as she bade him good morning, then she came alongside him. Then he tackled her to the ground, straddled her, and pinned her down with his considerable bulk. He's a big guy, like a linebacker dude, right? What happened in the next few moments may only have lasted seconds. All right. But it was an opportunity at that point for the police to warn residents that this guy was out there. He has since admitted that he attempted to rape her. And in interviews with the police, she said she thought she was going to be raped. She told the police she thought she was going to be raped. Yet, the San Diego Police Department classified the incident as an attempted robbery, which right there is always weird to me because joggers aren't the best people to rob because they just don't have crap with them. I mean, there's a lot of better places to rob somebody. Jogging paths is serial killer territory, not robber territory. A decision they classified as attempted robbery, a decision that led to a limited investigation and muted public information going out to the visitors to the park. And that, if they had gotten that information out, the other girl might not have been killed. Because I think that was afterwards. But anyway, this is what happened. As she lay on her back, screaming in terror, Gardner snarled at her to shut up. She thought she was going to be raped. And then she said, "You're going to have to kill me." He said, "That can be arranged." She feared for her life. Exactly what happened between Gardner and Munchausens over those few seconds is crucial in determining whether the incident was a sexual assault or a robbery. If Gardner had made any sexual comments to Munchausens, his intentions would have been clear both to his victim and later to the police. He tackled her, held her to the ground, and threatened to kill her. Okay. So, anyway, the police reports never had any information about her, that he said crude things to her. Okay. And therefore, she did, however, tell the investigators something that backed up the robbery classification and that she didn't say in the televised interview. Gardner did tell her to give her all of her money. Okay. But so while this was all happening, she sat up, smacked him in the nose with her elbow so forcefully that she felt the crunch of cartilage. As he held his hands to his face, Munchausens struggled free and ran away faster than I've ever run in my life until she got to some houses and called 911. Now, the report does say he was tackled by a white male who demanded money. So they classified this as a robbery. I think that they should have, because he tackled her. He didn't grab something from her. He didn't point a gun at her or a knife at her and say, "Give me your stuff." He tackled her. And I don't care what he said from that point on because he's a psychopath. He assaulted her. So he violently assaulted her and threatened to kill her. I would think at that point you say an extremely dangerous man is out there. And it's not unusual that serial killers are also robbers or serial killers are also burglars. They'll do both. They'll do everything at once. I mean, why not? You're already killing somebody. So what? You get rape them too, And so I think they should have taken that kind of assault extremely seriously. It wasn't just a robbery, and they didn't, and that's really unfortunate. Otherwise, I think they might have, well, it says here the suspect did not touch Munchausens in a sexual manner. No, because she smacked him in the nose with her elbow. That stopped it. God knows what would have happened to her. So what eventually happened is, and let's see what happened. When did they get him? Let's see here a second. They didn't put that. They didn't give that because it was a robbery. They just put it with the robbery division and not with the other division, which might be taking it more seriously. And then let's see. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else here. She says later on that she initially thought she was going to be raped, but she relaxed a little bit when he asked for money because she didn't have any money. And so she might, she thought, "I'm going to be raped." Then he asked for money. She goes, "Okay, just wants money." But, he's still on top of her. So she doesn't have any money. So did she really think she was just going to walk away, or could something else happen? If a person is willing to tackle a woman, smash her to the ground, he's willing probably to rape her. So, I mean, I'm sure at the time she was highly confused over what was happening. I mean, you're in a panic situation. The police weren't in a panic situation. And a woman gets violently assaulted on a jogging path, you ought to go with suspected serial killer. And that just bugs me that they didn't go with something more serious. And maybe they would prevent more disasters. But they, you know, they just let him run around, violating his parole over and over again, having an ankle bracelet that apparently didn't mean a dang thing except it was jewelry. This is a failure in the criminal justice system. They knew the guy was a dangerous child sexual predator, knew that, and also a sexual predator in general. He wasn't really a child sexual predator. He was actually, because he went for a teen. So basically a sexual predator. But a sexual predator is serial rapist or serial killer. Which one? I don't know, but it's going to be one of the two, and they're both highly dangerous. And they take it all too lightly, and that bugs me. So, really? Oh, is that true? The woman was trained by her dad, who was an MMA fighter. She made a great comment that really ticked him off. And when she asked him, did it hurt? I didn't read that one. Hope it did hurt. I hope it did hurt. Oh, this is good. Michaela says, threatening to kill someone is an offense in Australia. It ought to be. If you threaten to kill another person with express intention that the person would fear that the threat, that threat, it's guilty of an indictable offense. Yes, I think once you smash the person to the ground and you're physically capable of killing them, and you say, I'm going to kill you, I can kill you, I would say that should have a heavy penalty to come with it. Absolutely. I mean, it was a crime. It wasn't like they weren't like drinking and said something stupid to each other. The guy came out and sexually, assaulted her. And as I point out, jogging is one of the places that women get killed. And since I was asked, wait a minute, I do want to answer the question about what Pyropal says. Do they think he reformed from a child predator to an innocent robber who just happened to trip over women? There you go. There, probably. I mean, maybe that's how silly it is. Well, I forgot I was asked by Julie. Julie, if you're still here, and if you're not, hopefully you'll see the whole show. This will be my last point. I love a checklist of how to go jogging as a woman and avoid trouble. I know, don't go at 5 a.m. and don't go alone if you can help it, and don't take identical route every day. I bought a running machine. That might be the safest, but it doesn't give you the sun on your face and vitamin D. All right. Absolutely. I also have a really super cool treadmill, and I put my I have the computer screen, and I put YouTube on. I do virtual walks all over the world, and so I feel like I'm actually walking through different cities and things. Very cool. But what if you want to get out and really go jogging? Well, in my opinion, you go jogging where during the day and where there is a constant stream of people. In other words, a place which is like near me in Bowie, Maryland, we have a place called Allen Pond. If you go jogging during the day, there's tons of people out there. There's no way anybody's really going to grab you there because, it's going around it's a small lake, and everybody's out there. People are fishing in the lake. People are walking, jogging, picnicking. I mean, there's really no good way to grab somebody there. So you could run all you want around that place. Not a problem. And there's another place in Greenbelt, Maryland, which is a little bit larger. But again, it has such a large group of people. The chances of you getting attacked during the day are very, very small. If you can't go with another person, I would stay during the day and around people, and not some place where you end up in isolated stretches. Even during the day, I'd avoid isolated stretches. I definitely avoid them at dusk and dawn. And if it's dark, shouldn't be there at all. The only thing I can recommend other than that is carry one of those alarms, the loud alarms, not the sprays. I mean, those are questionable because they're hard to use. The alarm, because if the guy attacks you and you hit the alarm, that thing is so ear-splitting and horrible that A, it alerts people to something's happening over there, and B, so the guy's not wanting. If the alarm is screeching, all you have to do is throw it into the grass. You can't even find it and turn it off. It's screaming so loudly and piercing that he is not going to want to stay around to be caught, and it most likely also hurts his ears. So just get the hell out of there. That, to me, that alarm, that's the best thing out there. So find one of those, carry that with you. I think sometimes I can't remember, the one I had was when you pull so it disconnects. I can't remember quite how it works. I haven't had to use it. I've forgotten. But I would take that at least along with me. That's the best protection I can think of as far as just something simple for women. Carry the alarm. because it's the best. Okay, well, what's Bundy's MO? Huh? I don't know what you're talking about with Bundy's MO. Let's see. I'm not sure. I'm actually not saying true to what I don't know what you're referring to, Scarlett, so I can't answer that. I think that. Oh, don't help anyone. Okay. Well, that. Oh, there's a lot of there's a lot of methodologies for. Oh yeah, Lake Semimet. Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot of ways to lure someone. But if you're going to go jogging, the whole point is that you're jogging someplace where you're safe, where people are seeing you all the time. And as long as you don't go off to somebody's vehicle with them, you're good. And if you have the alarm, that's the best choice possible. There's always, safety in numbers is absolutely true. Oh shoot! I hope I didn't put you in timeout. The little dot you hit wrong, you're in timeout. Safety in numbers is absolutely true. Witnesses are the one thing that any criminal does not like, unless he knows he can't be identified. In that case, he doesn't care about witnesses. So, but yeah, basically you say don't help anyone. Well, you don't help people in situations where you're moving from witnesses to no witnesses. That's where the problem comes. You're in a bar, you're hanging out at a bar, you're drinking, you're having a fun time, and then that's where all the witnesses are, right? Where do you go? To your car. It's the walk to your car that'll do you in, because there's no witnesses. So that's where you always have to pay attention, to the point where the witnesses vanish. That's why the old thing where you bring somebody to their door and they get out of your car and you say good night. You don't just drive off and leave them standing on a doorstep fiddling with their keys, because you've just removed the one witness they have. You sit there and you make sure your friend gets in the house and closes the door. Then you leave. That's just common courtesy, in my opinion. But I've been teaching my granddaughter that, the other day when we dropped her little friend after school, or at Girl Scouts, we dropped her friend at her family's house. I do not believe the family was at home at that time. But I said, I'm sitting, she goes, okay, bye. And she was expecting me to drive away. I said, no, we don't drive away. I'm watching her. I'm making sure she gets in that house. And that's, again, you need to keep witnesses around you. There's a lot of times when I'm traveling, it's the same thing I say about traveling. Always be sure there's witnesses. And if you're a female especially, you want to be sure there's female witnesses and children witnesses. So you don't go off where there's just men, because then they might back each other up. Yeah, actually, men should not sometimes just be around men in certain places where they don't understand the safety. Better off with women and children, where, unless you have a mass murderer, these things are not as likely. So, yeah, stay with witnesses. Witnesses is the best. Jupo says, I'm a weight at least. I can't easily be heft by one person into a car boot. Yeah, like I said, that always does help. And it's true. If you're a heavily overweight person, that is one protection against serial killers. So sometimes you get some things going for you, So, but that's anyway. That's what I'm going to end up with today. So I'm glad you're all here. Sorry about all the technical problems. I still don't know why my camera's not working. It's so weird. Everything just stopped working, and I don't know if it's connections to the computer. I've never had it happen. So hopefully by the time I do, hopefully my show it'll be on Saturday. Things will be working again. Because this is concerning. Yeah. So anyway, oh, that's creepy. And Deanie says, Rodney Alcala or Alcala, I always forget how to say his name. Alcala, I say Alcala. Asked if he could take my pictures when I was 13 at the roller rink. Oh my God. Oh, glad you're here. He gave me his business card. I gave it to my mom, and she walked over to him and tore it up in his face. Oh, good for mom. Yes. And by the way, this is where the serial killer is the ruse thing. Girls like to feel pretty, and they love to be offered modeling and acting jobs, and they will. It's like candy. They'll just go, oh, you're going to take pictures of me? Oh, how exciting. I'm going to be a famous mom. That's the easiest thing to sucker women with, even older women. they'll sucker for that in a heartbeat. There's just some weird thing about women that like, you think I'm pretty? And also the guy has a card. It's what you can get, back in the old days, it was Kinko's, right? I mean, anybody can make a card, but somehow when things are in print, people believe things are in print. So if somebody hands you a card that says Detective so-and-so, you think it's a detective. It's just a card. That's all it is. He says he's a photographer. It's just a card. Actually, he was a photographer. He took pretty decent pictures, but he wasn't really, he's working for himself. But you can, cards are easy to make up and easy to convince people with. And now, oddly enough, people go online and they go on Tinder and places like that, and they believe what that person wrote. Are you kidding me? It's even worse than it's worse than a card. What? I'm not quite sure what that means. Anyway, thank you for being here. And I will be back on Saturday for the case show. And I know what I want to do, but I don't know if I'll be able to do it by Saturday. So I'll have two up in the air right now. We'll see what happens. Which one I go for. So anyway, thank you for being here, and hopefully I will be. All my technical problems will go away. Bye, everybody.